themortismedia.
Good evening all and welcome. Tonight I have a chilling collection of Skinwalker stories just for you. I would like to extend a very happy birthday to David Charles. I hope you've had a wonderful day, and here's the topic of your choice. If you'd like your birthday shout out, feel free to follow the link to Patreon in the description to find out more. But for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. I'm a 25-year-old male. I live in Utah, and I'm curious if any of you have seen anything like this before. I'm pretty sure I saw a Wendigo or a Skinwalker. I know it sounds strange or crazy. I don't really believe in those things, and I'm a regular skeptic when it comes to the paranormal. But still, help me explain this. Let me set the stage. This happened to me when I was 17 and in high school, living with my parents. My house at the time was in a very small town. The backyard faced open, empty fields and mountains for miles before you reached another civilization at all. My best friend happened to live next door and shared this field as our backyard in a way. I have to explain that his house was built on a different street that ended in the field with a small cul-de-sac. I think there were supposed to be more houses built down this street to expand the town, but they clearly never got around to it. So his driveway was basically in this cul-de-sac even though no other houses were built there. This matters for later in the story. I used to stay the night at my friend's house a lot in high school, because I didn't have the best relationship with my parents. Every once in a while we would wake up to hear dragging and weird gargling sounds from the back porch. His room was a basement room, with a window well to the back porch. It would happen maybe a few times a month, but whenever we would get the courage to check, nothing would ever be there, and this happened for years. One night haunts my friend and I to this day. We were getting ready to move, and would stay up all night playing games and watching movies. We decided to go on a music drive just to vibe, so we hopped into his truck with high beams and swung out of the driveway, turning them on towards the field to use as a roundabout. And that's when the light illuminated this thing. It looked like a person, but it wasn't. It was naked on all fours, abnormally large, particularly in its limbs, that seemed to fold under itself in an unnatural way. Its pale skin clung to it like it had been stretched onto it, but the part that still sends a shiver down my spine was its face. Its jaw hung open to this gaping black maw, like a snake unhinged to eat. Its black eyes glistened in the light as it looked at us, but just as it turned to see us, it quickly scurried backwards, almost like it was on rewind into the brush of the field. My friend and I were as pale as ghosts. We both looked at each other like, "Did you see that?" We were shaken. Let's just say we tried to have a good rest of the night, but we couldn't believe what we saw. We ended up just sitting there in his basement with guns ready and waiting to hear the gargling and the dragging again, but we never did. I don't live in that town anymore. There are times that I visit there though. The empty field still feels like there's something waiting there, and even though I can't see it, I'm convinced whatever it is still out there. I never expected to move into a 120-year-old log cabin in the middle of nowhere, Missouri. But life doesn't always wait for you to feel ready. My fiancé, our baby, and I ended up there about a month ago because of some messy family issues. And my aunt offered her place, and as we didn't have many options, we obliged. So we packed everything we owned into the car, and suddenly found ourselves living in a house that looked like it belonged on an antique postcard. The cabin was built in 1903, or at least that's what my aunt said. The land itself is surrounded by thick Missouri wood that swallow the sound in that eerie way only forests in the middle of nowhere seem to accomplish. For the first few weeks, everything felt fine. I mean, it was a bit old, a little drafty, but fine. My uncle would talk about strange things happening here and there over the years. Voices in the woods, shadows moving where nothing should be, and knocks on the door in the dead of night. He'd always laugh about it like it was a really funny story. I wasn't sure if he was trying to freak us out or just kind of make us prepared for what could be there. I mean, at first I laughed it off. My fiancé did too. We both chalked it up to rural folklore. But then things started happening. It began one Monday morning just before sunrise. My uncle is a truck driver, so he leaves early in the week and usually doesn't come home till Friday night. He called my aunt right after he pulled out of the driveway. "You won't believe what I just saw. There was a wolf by the fence line. I swear on my life, it was huge." My aunt repeated it to me and my fiancé, and we both gave her a look. A big wolf wasn't unheard of, but of course, that's when we started seeing it. Most mornings, right as the sky was barely turning blue, the wolf appeared down by the edge of the yard. Huge. Too big. Its silhouette didn't look right. It stayed outside the tree line and then drifted closer, pacing like it owned the place. And at night, it howled long and low. It actually woke the baby up a few times. Here's the part that really threw us. We have dogs here. They bark at anything that moves. They didn't care. They never barked, growled, or even perked their ears when we heard the wolf howl nearby. They acted like nothing was there. And that's when my stomach dropped. Animals notice things before humans and they react. They don't ignore predators. But if the dogs didn't seem to care, why? Is it because they were afraid of it? Or maybe because it wasn't a wolf at all? I tried to stay rational. Perhaps the wolf was sick. Maybe the dogs knew it wasn't a threat. Maybe I was overthinking it. But at night, when I was lying in bed listening to the floor creak and the wind scrape against the cabin walls, those explanations fell short. Every few nights there would be knocking on the doors. Just 2 slow taps spaced out, like someone testing to see if we'd answer. Other nights it could be louder and more confident. I'd stand in the hallway holding the baby monitor frozen, staring at the shadows near the back door, waiting for the shape to move. Then there were the sounds. Singing is the closest word I can use for it, but it doesn't really describe it. It wasn't like a human voice, it was more like a humming with a strange rhythm, almost patterned. Like someone outside was trying to remember an old song but couldn't quite get the melody right. The sounds drifted around the house, sometimes circling it. I'd be in the kitchen at night and hear it faintly near the back window. Another night it came from the woods, closer than it should have been. I kept brushing it off to keep from scaring myself. The cabin is isolated. Sounds carry. Old houses make noises. The woods have animals. All the usual excuses. But the thing is, the excuses started to feel weaker every time the wolf showed up. For weeks, one specific thought kept gnawing at the back of my mind, and I kept trying to push it away because it felt ridiculous and dramatic. But it just wouldn't leave the forefront of my brain. Skinwalkers. I grew up hearing stories about them from family. I'm 50% Native American, and while I don't pretend to know every detail of the folklore or speak for any tribe, the stories were always treated with respect, and never something one would joke about. I didn't want to make that connection. I didn't want to even think of the word, but once it crossed my mind, it stayed there, permeated. Especially when I started to do research, reading other encounters, realizing how many details lined up oh so adequately. The wolf being huge, the dogs acting like nothing was wrong, the knocking on the doors, the singing in the woods, the lingering feeling that we weren't alone out there. It made the entire month feel worse. The woods felt different at night too, still in a suffocating way, like something was just sitting behind the tree line, watching the house. Right now, as I'm sharing this, I keep hearing things outside, little noises, crunching and shifting and movement. A low sound that could be the wind, but I doubt it. And every time I pause to listen, it'll stop for a while until it starts again. The rational part of my brain is fighting the fear hard. Big wolves exist. Old houses make noises. But there are some things that I can't explain away. But the rest of me remembers the look on my uncle's face when he talked about what he saw. I don't know what's happening out on this land. All I know is I can't wait to be free of it. My grandparents owned about 80 acres of land, roughly 20 miles east of Snowflake, Arizona. Why my grandparents chose that land I will never know. Maybe it was cheap in the early 80s. Maybe they liked the isolation. Either way, they left San Miguel after my grandfather retired from the mine and settled into that place. The nearest neighbors were my aunt and uncle about a mile away, and the next closest was a rancher called Stoddard. I'd never heard the first name, just Stoddard. He lived 4 miles away, right at the base of one of the biggest bluffs. And my grandparents hated him. He was a rancher who acted like the entire desert belonged to him. If his cattle wandered onto your land, he'd shrug like it was your fault. More than once, my grandfather caught him cutting the barbed wire fence so his cows could graze on our property. The man had that entitled, sun-cracked arrogance only certain ranchers seem to cultivate. The land out there is littered with Anasazi ruins, cliff dwellings, old pueblos, pottery shards. Most of it was destroyed long before any archaeologist ever had a chance. Bulldozed by ranchers with backhoes hoping to find pots to sell. My family always figured Stoddard was one of them. One day after losing a calf, Stoddard was out near the bluffs. That's when he found it. A boulder the size of a pickup, leaning oddly against the face of the sandstone, sealing up a narrow opening. His curiosity won. He brought his backhoe, tore the sandstone slab away, and uncovered a cave. But it wasn't just any cave. It was an Anasazi burial chamber. I'm sure Stoddard saw nothing but dollar signs when he went inside, took whatever caught his eye, pottery, artifacts, maybe even bones, and sold what he could. That's when it began to rot. First, he lost $500,000 in a stock market crash, which was only the start. His cattle developed some sort of disease that swept through the herd like fire through grass. Dead animals everywhere. Financial ruin came quickly. Then his wife got sick, something really rare, someone that no one around here had ever heard of, and died within months. Not long after that, Stoddard got thrown off his horse and shattered his spine and never walked again. Bear in mind, all of this happened within just a few years. He became convinced he was cursed, and told anyone who would listen that disturbing the burial cave had ruined his life. Most people laughed him off, said he was just bitter, crazy, and unlucky. But Stoddard took whatever artifacts he still had, hauled himself back to that cave and returned everything, and used the backhoe to seal the entrance boulder back into place. Then one night, he abandoned his ranch entirely. House full of furniture, clothes still in the closet, dishes still in the sink. He simply left. A few years later, a man from California bought the property, fixed up the old ranch house and listed it for rent. Around the time, my aunt was pregnant with her first child and wanted to move closer to my grandparents, and she and her husband rented Stoddard's old place. It looked innocent enough in the daylight, a little run down but cozy. Out there at night, though, everything felt wrong, and for the first week or so, nothing happened. Then the noises started. My aunt said she'd hear faint chanting late at night, drifting across the property like wind, dragging voices along the edge. Sometimes there were drums, muted but steady, and she tried to explain it away. Maybe that hippie woman who lived on the bluff was doing spirit rituals. Maybe her husband working nights was making her jumpy, and maybe pregnancy hormones were tricking her. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched constantly. It got bad enough, she started having nightmares every single night. She finally told my grandfather, who loaned her his dog, a big, trained work mix. She drove him out to the ranch, and the second she opened the truck door, the dog's hackles shot up. He growled low and deep, refusing to step on the ground, and she had to physically drag him into the house. He didn't stop staring at the front door all night, and the chanting grew louder. In the morning, she found bare, human footprints circling the house, adult-sized. Things only escalated. Night after night, the dogs barked at walls, drums in the distance, and chanting drifting through windows. More bare footprints. My aunt barely slept. Finally losing her grip, she asked my grandmother to spend the night. My grandma was a deeply religious woman, gentle and solid as a rock. She came over that afternoon, cooked dinner, helped clean up, and tried to create a sense of peace. Afterwards, while my aunt napped, Grandma went for a short walk at the base of the bluff. Later, she said she felt something watching her, not like an animal, but something intelligent and hateful. She didn't dare tell my aunt, though. When the sun dipped behind the bluff, they decided to leave for my grandparents' place. They packed up, loaded the dog, and climbed in the truck. My grandma put the key in the ignition and it didn't even click. They tried again. The truck was dead. Grandpa wasn't home when they called, so they had no way to leave. And the night swallowed the desert whole. Then the chanting started again. The dogs began to growl, and something howled outside, not a coyote, not anything either woman had heard, but something big moved just beyond the reach of the porch light, pacing, circling, testing. My grandma prayed non-stop. My aunt cried quietly. Both of them flinched when something thumped hard against the wall. Finally, my grandmother's frantic calls reached my grandfather. "Elvin," she whispered into the phone. "Something's inside the house, you need to come." They waited for what felt like 4 hours, until headlights finally crested the hill. Before my grandfather even reached the house, something sprinted across the dirt road in front of his truck. His headlights caught it enough to reflect huge red eyes gleaming. Grandpa slammed the brakes, jumped out, and screamed at them to get into the truck. He fired 2 shots into the darkness, then tore out of there, speeding down the dirt road. My aunt made the mistake of looking back. She saw those same red eyes watching from the edge of the headlights. The next morning, my grandfather and my uncle returned to the house. They found bare footprints everywhere, not just human ones. Massive coyote tracks circled the home too. My aunt never went back. My grandmother swore for years afterwards she saw those same red eyes lurking at the edge of her property at night. Other families tried living in Stoddard's old place, and none lasted more than a few months. That whole area felt off. After learning more from Native American friends, I'm convinced my family stumbled into something sacred and dangerous. Skinwalkers are known to hunt burial grounds, to guard ruins and curse those who disturb the dead. Whatever Stoddard awakened that night when he left the cave, I don't think it ever went back to sleep. When most people think about a haunted place, they imagine a house or abandoned building. But I believe that whole areas can be hotspots for paranormal activity. For me, it would be the land lying east of Snowflake, Arizona, and west of Concho. Along the old Concho Highway, the landscape is that of red rock, sandstone ridges, and red sand. Ancient Anasazi ruins are numerous among the bluffs, echoes of a time when the land wasn't so arid and dry. Gnarled, twisted cedars dot the land, along with large, dry washes where sparse groves of cottonwood grow. My grandparents owned 80 acres of land, about 20 miles east of Snowflake. The locals in Snowflake refer to this area as Out East. My grandparents' mobile home sat on the top of a slow-rising hill. About a mile south at the bottom of the hill, my aunt and uncle had built a 3-level home where they lived with their 2 sons and 2 daughters. The house was a neat layout. From the front, it only looked 2 stories. But at the back, due to the slope of the hill, the basement was visible. A large wooden deck surrounded the middle section of the home. The home faced the west, and to the east, the hill slowly descended into a wash. From the back deck, there were views of the Zuni Holy Mountain, and Little Colorado River Valley near St. John's. This story is the account of the terrifying experience my older cousin Sam endured in the summer of '91. It was late June, and Sam was 17. While most people his age were enjoying their summer vacation, Sam wasn't. He had attended a huge graduation party and gotten drunk as a skunk. Unfortunately for him, the sheriff's department had also attended the party, and he had received an underage consumption ticket, probation, and a severe tongue lashing and a summer grounding. His mother even took the keys to his pickup he had worked all last summer to buy. They were stuck in the middle of the boonies. He had kept pretty busy, though, helping out grandparents who lived up the hill. After coming home in the late afternoon, he noticed that the neighbor Jeff, from about 5 miles to the west, had stopped to visit with his dad, Bill. Jeff was one of those hippie guys. He was cool and all, but everyone suspected he probably partook in a little too much LSD in the 70s. Jeff had a place on the top of the bluff, which ran adjacent to Stoddard's house. Bill and Jeff were on the porch chatting when Sam walked up. He said hi to Jeff, and Jeff asked him if Sam would want to help him with a project on his property. He said he'd pay him a couple of $100 for a week or two's worth of work, and Sam agreed. Some party money for when his parents left town next week for their trip to Nebraska with our grandparents, he thought. The next morning, Bill gave Sam his keys back so that he could drive over to Jeff's place. When he arrived, Jeff was loading up shovels and equipment in his truck. Sam hadn't asked what they were going to be doing, but assumed after seeing the shovels, they were probably going to be replacing fence posts. Jeff told him to hop in the truck, and they headed to the north along the very top of the bluff on a barely visible 2-track dirt road. The top of the bluff had a very good view of the surrounding area. You could see the outskirts of Snowflake and the big, dry wash dotted with cottonwood to the west, the White Mountains dominating the horizon to the south, and to the north, mesas near Holbrook were visible as well. To the east was a little valley along a smaller wash. He could just make out the roof of Stoddard's house. At Stoddard's house, the thought sent a shiver down his spine and gave him goosebumps. He pushed the story of what happened there to the back of his mind. They went around a small sandstone alcove, and Jeff stopped the truck. In front of them was a large ruin. Sam had grown up out east, and had seen many Anasazi ruins. It looked like a large pile of loose sandstone, but a closer look revealed pottery shards everywhere. Like almost all of the ruins, this one had large holes where someone had used a backhoe to find pots at some time. And Sam got an uneasy feeling. Jeff must have seen his face because Sam said he started explaining that his project was to excavate the ruin. He had such a grand plan. He was going to excavate the ruin and open a museum on his property with what he'd found. He'd charge people like $5 to come and check it out. Sam argued that wasn't digging in the ruins illegal? Jeff told him, not if you owned the property it sat on, which honestly made Sam feel even more uncomfortable. What about angering spirits? Jeff laughed. You mean Stoddard's place? Sam nodded. Don't get me wrong, Sam. Your aunt and grandma are nice, honest people, but I don't think it was Indian spirits. I think they heard rumors in town about what happened to Stoddard and they freaked themselves out. Besides, this isn't a burial ground, there are bodies here. Sam says now we should have listened to that feeling, telling him to leave. But money was money, and he brushed it off and started shoveling. Around noon, Jeff headed over to his house to make Sam and him some lunch. while Sam stayed at the ruin. He didn't really think much about it at the time, but he noticed it was extremely quiet around the ruin. There were no sign or sounds, not even cicadas, which were very frequent around this time of year. He said on the wind he swore he could hear a faint voice, but chalked it up to being freaked out by Stoddard's place being only a few miles away. When Jeff returned with their sandwiches, he also brought a camera so they could document their progress and put pictures in the museum. Jeff had Sam take pictures of him in the room they had cleared out, and with these items. So they worked for a week. They weren't making much progress. They hadn't found a lot, a small pot, some beads, and half a matatu. Sam was happy to have a day off. All during the week, he had fought the feeling that something bad was going to happen. He was glad to get away from the room for a while. He dreamed one night that his bed had been shaking. After a pretty uneventful weekend, Sam returned to Jeff's house Monday morning. To his surprise, there was a backhoe parked in his driveway. Another neighbor had loaned it to Jeff. Jeff was excited because now he could make more significant progress. They made a lot of progress. They uncovered 3 to 4 rooms, found some more artifacts. Tuesday and Wednesday go by the same. More rooms, more artifacts, all the while snapping pictures. And after filling 4 rolls of film, Jeff takes them into town so they can be developed. This was way before camera phones and digital cameras, where it took about 10 days for your pictures to be developed. It was now Thursday. They had come across a pretty large room in the pueblo. In the middle is a large block of sandstone. This piqued Jeff's curiosity. The rest of the sandstone they had come across was small. Using the backhoe, he moved the sandstone to the side. There was a black hole beneath. Something about that black hole made Sam's stomach knot. Jeff was extremely excited. He looked into the hole but was unable to make anything out. He grabbed a flashlight and shined it into the hole. "It's another room," Jeff exclaimed. Sam, for some reason, didn't want to look. Something about that opening made his skin crawl. Jeff told Sam to run and grab a ladder. He did, hoping Jeff wasn't going to ask him to go down there. Thunder rolled in the distance as he headed back up to the ruin. Monsoon clouds were building to the south, and the wind had picked up. Jeff put the ladder down into the opening, and Sam asked him if it was safe. Jeff figured since the room had been filled with dirt and giant slabs of sandstone for nearly 1,000 years, he didn't reckon the roof was going to collapse now. Jeff descended the ladder with a flashlight. "Holy hell," he exclaimed. He called to Sam, who slowly made his way over. "Bring the camera and come down." Sam felt terror grip him. He didn't want to go down there, but he also didn't want Jeff to think that he was chicken. He grabbed the camera and descended to the black pit. At first it was so dark he couldn't see anything. He saw the beam of Jeff's flashlight shining on a large corrugated pot. Even with the sunlight coming down, the opening didn't seem to penetrate the darkness. Finally, it dawned upon Sam that the walls and floors were black. The air was stale and smelled strongly of soot. Jeff was excitedly moving around the room to see the treasures it held. A long roll of thunder boomed in the distance. "Start taking pictures," Jeff exclaimed, annoyed that Sam was just standing there. "Make sure the flash is on." Sam began to snap photos. The flash illuminated the room briefly. About the 3rd photo, Sam caught a glimpse of something that made him jump. A human skull. Heart pounding in his chest, he squealed out, "Jeff, there's a skull." Jeff was busy looking here and there and didn't hear him. He snapped another picture, just to be sure. And then he said louder, "Jeff, there's a skull." "What?" "Oh, yes, a skull. There's a few of them down here." Looks like there was a fire in this room, he thought. He kicked one across the room towards Sam, and Sam jumped. "What the hell, man?" Sam said, his fear turning to anger. "Dude, this isn't right. You shouldn't be messing with bodies. Don't we need to call the cops or something?" Jeff laughed. The cops? And tell 'em what? We found a bunch of 1,000-year-old dead Indians. Sam was really pissed now. Listen, Jeff, if you want to mess around with this stuff, be my guest, but I'm done. There's something bad about this place and I want to go. You're scared of a bunch of bones? Whatever, man. I'm not paying your ass to be a crybaby. Sam tossed Jeff's camera to the ground and climbed up the ladder, and Jeff started cussing at the broken camera. But Sam didn't care. He started walking back to Jeff's house where his truck was parked. The wind was blowing pretty hard now. Black clouds covered the sun. Sam now saw flashes of light, along with thunder. When he arrived home, he remembered that my aunt and uncle had left along with his sister on their trip to Nebraska. His older brother, Zach, had also gone to work at Pizza Hut for the evening, and he was tired. He laid down on the couch and fell asleep, trying not to think about the black room full of bones. A loud crack of thunder shook the house and jolted Sam awake. The house was dark. He fumbled his way to find the light switch and flipped it, but there was nothing. A flash of lightning illuminated the room. Damn, storm must have kicked the power out. The wind was howling outside and he fumbled around in the closet until he found the lantern and lit it. He still felt extremely creeped out, so he went up to his bedroom where he had a joint. He figured he'd smoke it. It would help with his nerves. His bedroom faced the driveway, and he opened the window to let some light in to find his joint. A flash of lightning, and that's when he saw something dart across the driveway. His heart skipped a beat. He heard his dog start barking. He put down the joint and closed the window. He felt the terror gnawing at his guts. What the hell was that? He goes downstairs as a precaution and locks the front sliding door. And he hears heavy footsteps running across the porch. And now he goes into full panic mode, realizing the side door is unlocked. He bolts across the living room and trips over a chair. The dogs are freaking out, growling and barking, and he catches a glimpse of something run by the living room window illuminated by the flash of lightning. He gets to the door, fumbling at the lock. Whatever is outside has a hold of the knob. It starts to turn. He slams the deadbolt locked. Shit. The basement sliding glass door. He bolts down the stairs. He makes it to the door, finding it already locked, which is a relief. And then another flash of lightning. In it, he sees the silhouette of what he thinks is a man, covered in fur, maybe? Red eyes, shining from the darkness where his face should be, standing at the edge of his yard. It's very tall. Looking into those red shining eyes for that moment, his breath caught in his throat. Panic wells up in him. Scrabbling, he falls backwards, knocking his head on a table. Crying, he gets up to his feet and bolts upstairs to find the phone. All he can think of is to dial 911. His heart is hammering in his brain. He picks up the phone. Nothing. A large thud coming from the roof shakes him from his despair. The thing is on the roof. Gun. First thing that comes to mind. He bolts to his parents' bedroom where they keep a shotgun in the closet. The dogs bound in after him, and that's when it starts pouring with rain. He can still hear footsteps on the roof. He locks the door behind him, going into the closet. The dogs follow him in. He finds the shotgun, his hands shaking like crazy as he loads it. The dogs are quiet. He can't hear anything coming from the roof anymore. Where the hell is it? In the house? He sits in the closet and waits. The dogs huddle around him. What seem like hours pass, and nothing but the distant boom of thunder as the storm marches on. He begins to calm down, still in shock. At this point, the storm has rolled to the north. Suddenly, he hears the doorknob rattling. Bang, bang, bang. Beating on the door. Boom. The shotgun goes off, blowing a hole in the closet ceiling, and someone screams. "Don't shoot!" He hears his brother Zach scream. Tears run down Sam's face. He drops the gun and runs to the door, unlocking it, almost knocking his brother over. "What the hell, man? Why are you shooting at me?" But Sam is in a daze. The story of what had happened earlier in the day and this evening spews out of him, and Zach listens without a word. At the end, Zach only asks, "Okay, Sam, what did you smoke?" "Nothing, bro, I'm not high." And Zach laughs. "Okay, but Mum is gonna be pissed, not only because you blew a hole in their closet, but also all the mud you brought in, bro. You better get that cleaned up." Mud? What mud? And how did Zach get in? The house was locked. He asks Zach, and Zach tells him the sliding glass door was wide open. The electricity had come back at some point while he was in the closet. True to what Zach said, there were red, mud, bare footprints all around the house. And it wasn't him. He showed Zach his shoes, bare feet, and that the prints were way larger than his. "I bet it was Jeff," Zach concluded. "He probably came over to mess with you because he's pissed you quit and busted his camera. He knew you were freaked out, so he figured he'd mess with your head." Sam isn't sure, but it makes him feel better. "Yeah," he tells himself. "Jeff, that asshat. I must not have got to the latch on the sliding glass door closed. The noise on the roof must have been the wind blowing shingles off the roof." It all began to make sense. He and Zach drink a few beers that their dad had left in the fridge. They clean the mud to the best of their ability, and after getting buzzed, they decide they're going to go over in the morning to confront Jeff. Zach says he needs to pay Sam an extra, since now they need to rent a carpet shampooer to clean the mess Jeff made. They decide to go into town, and one of their friends is throwing a party. I don't think either one of them wanted to stay out there. The party is one that's out in the boonies with a big bonfire. There are 20 teens there. Sam is having a hard time enjoying the party. He keeps feeling like something is watching over him. The beer isn't tasting as good, and he isn't really socializing with his friends. They ask him what's wrong, but he just says he's tired. The full moon is rising to the east, casting its eerie light in the sandstone bluff and cedars. Sam gazes past the firelight and catches a glimpse of something moving just out of the reach of the firelight. It moves behind a bush. Must be someone peeing, he thinks to himself. But his gut is disagreeing with him. Suddenly a strange, throaty howl pierces the night. Sam jumps. He looks around, but no one else seems to have heard anything. They continue laughing and talking. He now turns to see the large figure of a man standing just outside the firelight. He is paralyzed with fear. The man's face is hidden in shadow, but Sam can feel his eyes piercing him. He closes his eyes and starts whispering a prayer under his breath. When he has the courage to open them, the man is gone. He tells Zach he's going home. Zach decides to stay. Sam doesn't really want to go home. He also doesn't want to go back to the party. Mind racing, he heads east down the old Concho highway. Surely, he thinks to himself, he's just freaking himself out. Jeff came over and scared him, and that person at the party was probably just someone who was out peeing. It all makes sense. He notices something running across the highway. It's around 2 a.m., so the highway is quite deserted. He slows down, thinking it must have been a deer. And then there's a crash. Something hits the back of the truck, jerking it forward. He slams on the brakes, looking in the rear mirror. He catches a glimpse of shining eyes, and at this moment he's in full panic mode. He stomps on the gas, sheer terror engulfing him, too afraid to look back. He sees something out of the corner of his eye. He turns to look and sees a man running next to the truck. He looks down at his speed. 70. He looks again, and now the coyote-type creature is looking at him. At first, its face is shrouded in darkness. Then, he said, it transformed before his eyes. The only way he could describe it was that of a demon. Large, red eyes, a twisted smile, and showing long, sharp teeth. It threw back its head and laughed. It took a long, clawed hand and scratched along the truck as it sped past and vanished into the dark. So, this is what I remember. We lived about 2 hours away from Snowflake. I'm 7 years old in my bed. Around 3 in the morning, my family is awakening to someone pounding on the door. Of course, this wakes everyone up as us kids watch Dad open the door and see Cousin Sam arrive, who's as white as a sheet, shaking and crying. My parents are pretty startled, trying to figure out what's going on, and he starts babbling about demons chasing him, and my mum sends us back to bed. The next day, my dad calls a Navajo friend, and they take him to someone near Sanders to see a medicine man. After they return, Sam stays with us until his parents return from Nebraska. When he finally does go home, he never sees anything again. Years later, when I was older, we became closer, and I asked him what happened that night when he showed up at our house, and he reluctantly told me. I later asked my parents about it, and they confirmed it was the same story he had told them, minus one final part. So the morning that Sam showed up at our house, Zach, his older brother, went out to Jeff's house to collect Sam's money. When he got there, Jeff wasn't there. The door to the house was wide open. The inside was trashed, furniture overturned and broken. Jeff ended up being gone for about 6 months. Everyone wondered where he'd gone to. No one really knew any of his family, just that they were from the Midwest. At one point, my grandma filed a missing persons report with the sheriff's office, but later the sheriff informed her that Jeff was back east. When he does finally return, he is gaunt-looking and looks like he's aged 20 years in the last 6 months. Everyone wondered if it was drugs. Fast forward 5 or 6 years, my grandparents invite Jeff to Thanksgiving at their home. Sam had graduated and long since moved away, but he's up for Thanksgiving. Jeff asks Sam to come to his truck because there's something he wants to show him. And, after 6 years, Sam agrees. Jeff hands him a stack of photos. They were the very pictures that he had taken while excavating the ruin. Sam flips through them, not really wanting to think about what happened back then. In the last few years, he had convinced himself it was a bunch of coincidences, and he freaked himself out over them. Jeff unhappily tells Sam to look at the pictures closer, and he does. At first, he doesn't notice anything, but he notices in the shadows on the picture there are figures. Small, twisted, and evil with the same face as the demon that had chased him. Jeff apologized to Sam, but he said he had to make sure he wasn't crazy. And he tells Sam that in the 6 months he was gone, he was hunted by this thing that followed him all the way to Oklahoma. Finally, he sought out the help of a medicine man. He returned the artifacts back and filled the ruin in. Sam said he didn't know what happened to the pictures, and he didn't want to know. I'd like to share my experience on what was easily the most terrifying moment of my life, and in my opinion, contact with something undoubtedly vengeful. I decided to take a walk a few nights ago. I live along the Mississippi River, near East River Road in Minneapolis. I've taken this route many times before, day and night, and had previously walked the same route around the same time a few nights before this took place. I had a few strange experiences on my way down to the woods along the riverbank. On my way down the large staircase to the riverbank, I heard a couple chattering above me. I looked up the stairs multiple times but saw no one. 15 minutes later on my walk, things were going great. I was enjoying my time in the woods, and peace was filling my soul. Keep in mind, I have a history of camping, hunting, and hiking lonesome in the woods, and being alone in the dark has never once scared me. I have been to therapy out of curiosity, and am about as neurotypical as it gets. I also have a great sense of self, and think in my own personal Jiminy Cricket voice, contrary to the image thought process amongst a lot of others. The sun was descending past the horizon, and I decided to continue onwards. I reached a hard-to-make-out bend in the path that I could not see past, and all of a sudden a woman's voice popped into my head. "Turn around." I gleefully ignored it and continued on my merry way. "Turn around." I decided on a log that it would be suitable as a stopping point in front of me, and continued forward. "Turn around," echoed through my skull, the second I reached my pre-designated stopping point. At that moment, a wave of inexpressible anxiety shivered its way through my core. I was shaking to the bone. I turned on my heel and marched my ass back the way I came. Something deep in my essence told me if I didn't turn around at that moment, I would be dead. The sun had descended past the horizon, and coincidentally, at this moment, I was swallowed by total darkness. The feeling of being watched does not even begin to express the utter dread I was exposed to. I was being followed. I know not if it was animal, human, spirit, or something in between, but the presence of impending doom behind me was unmistakable. I have never known such fear. I have had panic attacks from college, grief, from a breakup with a woman I thought I would marry, and felt the crushing weight of debt, but have never felt such utter hopelessness in my entire life. I heard the woman's voice again. "Do not look back," and heeded and marched, ignoring the shadows flickering the outskirts of my vision. I rounded a bend, climbed a hill, and started to feel a release on the presence. I still felt like I was being followed, but from far away, enough distance not to do me harm at the very least. I'd slowed my pace in the slightest, and this turned out to be one of the 2 mistakes I made that night. In my brief period of relaxation, I heard another voice that was not my own, a deep and raspy voice that wanted no other than to announce its presence. I felt every single muscle in my back clench as I did everything in my power to put space between me and that presence. My skin felt like it was shredding. Shivers does not even begin to describe the fight or flight reflex my body was going through. My body wanted to sprint, but something deep down told me that if I ran, I would activate a prey/predator instinct and the hunting would begin. 10 minutes of utter pain go by, with every step slightly echoed by another that was not my own. The massive staircase that led me down to the riverbank was back in sight. In that moment, I talked myself into insanity, and I did what any rational human would do. I decided to enjoy the beauty of the metropolis before me, a quick snap, and this was the first time I stopped moving since the initial encounter, feeling I was slightly safe due to my escape route being so close. My long strides immediately halt at the perfect angle, and behind me I hear not 1, not 2, but 3 steps echo off the asphalt. I power-walked harder than I've ever power-walked before, and the second before I put my foot on the stair, every single one of the hairs on my neck stood to attention. I felt like something was breathing down my neck. It would be no exaggeration to say I jumped up the first flight of stairs. Once I scaled the 3rd flight, the impending doom began to recede, and a feeling of indescribable warmth filled my chest. All I could muster in my own head was "Thank you, God." Once I neared the top and was about to round the last bend before entering into the light of the city, I risked a peek into the thick darkness below me and saw nothing but empty trail. I've never experienced this primal fear in the 24 years of life on this planet, and hope I never do so again. People have told me, speculated, that they believe this could be the workings of a Skinwalker. I don't know if they're right or not, having no knowledge on the subject myself, but I leave this down to you. What do you think? Could it be that very creature, or something else entirely? My grandma was a prolific storyteller. She had loads of really interesting stories that were compounded by the fact they all happened about 60 to 70 years before. We were always captivated. But there was one story though, the one about the night she saw a person become something else, that stuck with me in a way none other ever has. She grew up in a tiny settlement, tucked between mesas, a place with maybe 20 families total, and honestly half of them were probably related. She said everyone out there shared the same rule. If you hear something call your name after dark in the woods, you pretend you didn't. You keep your head down and just walk faster. If they sound exactly like someone you know, walk faster still, and if you hear whistling in the woods, you run. She told me she learned the rule the hard way. When she was 18, she used to help her uncle herd goats in the evenings. One night he didn't come back at sundown, so she went looking. With an old lantern, she followed the old path and found him on the ridge near the arroyo. But he wasn't alone. Next to him stood someone she recognized, her neighbor, Jonas, but he wasn't moving right. He told me his body was bent like his bones didn't quite belong to him anymore, like he was wearing himself wrong, if that makes sense. Her uncle looked terrified. Her eyes wide, mouth twitching, made no sound. She tried calling out and Jonas turned towards her. She said the way he smiled made her skin crawl because it didn't match his face. Her uncle snapped out of it long enough to grab her arm and drag her back down the ridge. He didn't speak until they reached the house, and when he finally did, he only said one thing. Jonas isn't Jonas anymore. Her family barred the doors, and all night they heard scratching at the walls, slow footsteps circling the property and something tapping on the windows. Weeks later, word spread that Jonas had been seen wandering the flats alone, muttering to himself, tearing at his clothes like he was trying to peel them off. One night he walked into the brush and vanished for good. Some say he walked on 2 legs, some say 4, but no one ever went to look. Grandma always told me people don't just become skinwalkers, they unravel into them. It starts with wanting something so badly, they carve pieces of themselves out just to make room for it. It doesn't happen in an instant. It's like a shadow growing teeth, she said. I asked if she ever saw Jonas again, but she shook her head. But once, when I was maybe 12, I heard something outside the house call my name softly, almost familiar. Grandma grabbed my wrist so hard it hurt. Her voice dropped into a trembling whisper that I'd never heard before. Don't look. It can borrow faces. And I swear, something scraped along the side of the house right after she said that. And I've never forgotten that sound. While horseback riding in the Shawnee National Forest, I had something happen that I still can't shake. My friend and I planned an early morning trail ride from her campground. It was supposed to be just a chill day in the woods. We saddled up around 8 a.m., her mum's German Shepherd mix trotting alongside us. A few hours in, we reached a fork in the forest. One path was familiar following the creek. The other was a brand new trail everyone at camp kept talking about, which they called the hard one, the one people said wasn't meant for older horses like ours. It climbed straight up a ridge, wrapped around a bluff, and then dropped into the woods on the other side. The sign had the word caution basically screaming at us. We looked at each other and silently agreed, nope, and kept to the creek trail. We rounded the hill, and I watched the dog sprint ahead into the tall grass. I figured he was beelining it for the water, but halfway across the creek, the sound tore through the woods. That of an animal screaming. And it's not the kind of scream that makes you think, oh, something got spooked. This was real, gut-wrenching pain. For a second I thought it was the dog, until he hobbled out of the grass towards us completely unharmed, ears pinned back. The screaming didn't subside though. It sounded like a dog having a stroke. Again and again we heard the noise. I actually work in an animal shelter, so I know canine distress sounds, and it was worse than anything I'd ever heard. And the sound was coming from above us. The only way there was the new trail. My friends started calling out, asking if anyone was up there, because why would a dog be that far out alone, that deep in the woods screaming like that? We received no answer, nothing but birds and running water and a horrible choking wail. We rode through the creek slowly, scanning the ridge, calling out over and over. Whatever it was close enough that the hair on my arm stood up. but we couldn't see a thing through the trees, just the steep bluffs rising over us like a wall. We just crossed to the other side, turning our horses away from the hill, when the screaming stopped, like someone had turned it off. My friend and I just stared at each other for a minute, both thinking the same thing, but not wanting to say it out loud yet. And we rode in silence, unsettled as hell. By the time we reached our turnaround point, she finally asked if we could go back along the new trail. She couldn't stop thinking that maybe something was hurt up there and we'd ignored it. I didn't want to go, but I also didn't want to leave some animal suffering. So, we went. We climbed the ridge, followed the path, and reached the spot closest to where we estimated the sound had been. But we couldn't find anything. There were no tracks, no disturbed brush, no blood, no animal, no people even. We whistled, we called out. Not even an echo answered us. If it had been a coyote, it would have been strange. Middle of the day, deep scream like that, then absolute silence. Coyotes don't usually act like that in broad daylight, and they sure as hell don't vanish without a trace. We eventually gave up and rode back to camp. But the whole way I kept replaying it and trying to rationalize it, trying to make it fit into something normal. And I couldn't. I don't know. I'm not saying it was a skinwalker, but I also can't explain what happened up there. If you've got a better idea, I'm all ears. I live in northern Canada, a small city surrounded by endless forests and lakes. You might already know where. A few days before everything started, I got completely hooked on reading Skinwalker stories, like obsessively. I was binging them non-stop on Reddit threads, forums, YouTube narrations. It was practically the only thing I did for 2 days straight. I don't know why I fixated on them like that, but something about them had me in a grip I couldn't explain. Then one evening in midsummer, my boyfriend and I decided to go for a drive. We wanted to smoke by the lake and just chill. The lake was about 30 minutes outside city limits, and you had to take this long, winding dirt road through dense trees and marsh to get there, somewhere I'd never driven before. Everything was quiet. The lake was just a simple boat launch. No one camped there, and no one lived out that way. Halfway down the dirt road, this unbearable smell hit us from inside our closed truck, out of nowhere. It reeked like rotten meat, thick and sour like something had died and sat in the sun for days. It made my stomach turn instantly. There was no roadkill, or cabins, or any reason for the smell to be there at all. The air had been clear moments before. I didn't know what to think. I told my boyfriend maybe we should go, turned the truck right around there in the middle of the road, and began heading back. 10 minutes later, down the road, just as suddenly as it came, the smell vanished. And then we started seeing foxes standing by the side of the road, staring at us as we drove by, one after another, like they knew something we didn't. After that night, I started having bad dreams. They started just a few days after the drive, and in every one I'd see a dark shadow standing over me, sometimes near the bed, sometimes on the ceiling. Sometimes it would watch. Other times I'd feel my body get flipped upside down or lifted up like I was being pulled towards the ceiling. I'd wake up sweating, paralyzed and afraid. The dreams were vivid and violent and didn't stop. I was actually scared to fall asleep. I started avoiding it entirely and I couldn't sleep alone. I couldn't be alone, period. The presence, whatever it was, felt tangible. And just when I'd felt it closing in, it would vanish again, but never for long. Bear in mind this went on for months. My parents started praying for me. My family did too. I started praying for myself every single night. I didn't know what was going on with me. And then one day the presence disappeared around the start of December. The dreams stopped. No more fear at night, it just ended. I haven't been back to that lake road since. And I've stopped reading Skinwalker stories altogether. Part of me wonders if all of this happened because I freaked myself out reading and listening to all those stories. Or perhaps it was reading and listening to all those stories that drew a skinwalker into my vicinity. And then on that lonely road, it was trying to get to me. And since then it's haunted me. I don't know if these are adequate explanations or not, but what I do know is that I try to avoid the word and even looking up anything to do with it ever since, and I suggest you all do the same. We used to joke about the name of a certain Navajo legend, using it to scare our friends who had no idea what it was when we got high. Admittedly, it was funny at the time. However, that changed on, ironically, Friday the 13th of June, between the hours of 2 or 3 a.m. A group of friends and I were hanging out in a cul-de-sac that borders a large hill where no houses are. The hill is surrounded by houses all along its borders, but a large chunk is only brush and trees with trails. Less than half a mile away is a large nature preserve bordered by mountains that lead to Black Star Canyon, California. My friends wanted to smoke some weed, and we were being a bit loud. I didn't want to disturb my neighbors, so I suggested we walk up the trail a bit and smoke there. While on the trail overlooking the houses, we heard a loud snapping sound like a tree branch snapping, not like a twig. We heard this sound around 10 or so times in regular intervals over the course of 15 minutes. My friends didn't pay it much mind, but I was focused in on it. I didn't smoke, so I was sober this whole time. While listening to it, I thought a name. Eventually, we decided to go back to the cars and closer to the house. Then while walking at the end of the trail, we heard a loud crying sound, like that of a child. It was loud and went on for more than 10 minutes, and by this time we were at the cars talking about it. It must have been closer to 3 a.m. at this point. Then, while we were talking about the crying, we heard some twigs snapping in the brush on the hill behind the cars. I turned and looked, scanning the hills. I thought I saw something move, but it could have just been the breeze moving a bush. Then we all heard a quiet, quick whistle from the hill. I turned to my friends and asked them if they heard that. Then when they said they did, I asked if any of them did that. They all shook their heads. When we realized this, we ran into the cars and drove down the hill. I live on a large hill, to the parking lot of a CVS. While there, we all got into one car to talk about what happened. Then we saw a coyote cross in front of the cars maybe 100 feet away from us, look at us, and then leave. I've taken this experience as a massive warning to never play around or disrespect its name again. I went from a skeptic who enjoyed the occasional story of this nature and listening to them on the internet to downright terrified, and to even think about the name or be alone outside. The truth of the reality is that we were a bunch of 20-year-olds who just freaked ourselves out, but it was a strange combination of events after messing around, and we did find out. I urge everyone not to make the same mistake we did, joking around and saying the name. I live near a patch of woods that stretches out behind our neighbors and connects to a few campgrounds. The whole area is full of little forgotten spots, including this old busted baseball court my friends and I always use. The court has a stone floor, cracked straight down the middle, and 2 rusted hoops with no net. Last summer, on a particularly warm day, we headed out there to play. Everything was normal at first. Then barking began, which wasn't loud, just strange. The pitch kept shifting. Sometimes it sounded far away, sometimes it sounded ridiculously close, like just behind the tree line, almost like it was circling us. My friends ignored it, said it was probably some dog from the nearby campsite, but I kept quiet. About 10 minutes later, I threw a shot so it bounced off the rim and launched into the woods. Of course, I got stuck being the one to go retrieve it, as I was the one who made the shot. About 10 minutes later, I threw a shot so badly it bounced off the rim and launched into the woods. The second my shoes touched the dirt, something felt different. I swear the cicadas even went quiet, and the barking started, but closer. The sound had this weird quality to it, almost like it wasn't coming from a dog at all, but the wood themselves, like a voice using the shape of a bark. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to keep going. I found the ball wedged between 2 roots, and the minute I bent down to grab it, a sharp pain shot through my palm. It was so fast that my whole arm twitched. It wasn't like a thorn or a cut. It was deeper and hotter. I grabbed the ball anyway and jogged back to the court, my hand throbbing like something was pulsing in it. When my friends asked what happened, I just said that I pulled something. They carried on while I sat watching, holding my hand, trying not to freak myself out. Eventually the pain faded, and the barking stopped. Everything sounded normal again, which made me relax a little. After a bit, I realized I had to pee badly. My friends didn't want to leave yet, and I didn't feel like sprinting home. So I wandered behind the court in the trees, not too far but far enough to be out of sight. I immediately felt the temperature drop. The air felt colder and stiller back there, like the light couldn't reach it. I tried to ignore the feeling of crawling up my spine and focused on doing what I came there to do. Then the sense of being watched hit me. It wasn't vague. I swear it felt like someone was standing behind a tree only a few feet away, staring straight at me. My skin tightened all over. I zipped up and started walking back towards the court, trying not to look like I wanted to run. The barking exploded behind me. My palm lit up again, with the exact same pain as earlier but worse. When I turned around to look, there was nothing. I ran, burst back onto the court, breath shaking, hand burning, and told my friends I wanted to go. They looked confused, but I didn't care. I needed to get away from those woods. The farther I got from the trees, the more everything went back to normal. The pain in my hands stopped, the air felt lighter, the barking followed me. By the time I got home, everything felt weirdly fine. I didn't talk about it for a while, not to my friends, not to anyone. I figured it was just nerves, heat, whatever. But the way the barking moved and the pain, the feeling of being watched, I don't know. I've gone over it more times than I can count, and every time I do, I come up with the same unsettling thought. Whatever was making those sounds was no dog. What it was, I cannot be sure of, but my mind always wandered onto the possibility of it being a Skinwalker. What do you all think? I started going to Camp Loican when I was 6. Year after year, summer after summer. Lake Como became a second home, and by the time I hit 2022, I was basically one of the old veterans that staff forgot to keep an eye on because I'd been here for so long. It was hilarious, because I'd already decided that that final summer was going to be my most hinged one ever. Sneaking out, late-night adventures, living like my inner 12-year-old gremlin was finally in charge. The place wasn't supposed to be scary. My skate instructor had a full-on psychological breakdown one summer. People said he went insane, which is never a comforting sentence to hear from a camp director trying to calm you down. The owner later got into a horrible accident after claiming he saw something on the road. His skull had literally cracked in half on impact, and there were carved symbols that appeared around the burn pit. No one ever admitted to doing those. Still, the camp functioned like normal. Kids smoked behind the cabins, snuck off to kiss behind the art building, tried alcohol once and regretted it forever. The usual summer chaos. But then there were the woods, which lined the camp like tall sentinels. I had walked those trails for years, but this year was the first time I did something very different. I snuck out. There was a path behind my cabin that no one used anymore. Probably because the main roads were easier and didn't involve branches slapping you in the face. The abandoned walkway cut straight through the forest up to the upper field in a tiny pavilion where I could get just enough reception to send messages. It was perfect for sneaking up because it bypassed everything that was supervised. The first night I crept through that path, my whole body felt weird. Not in a I might get caught way, but more like I thought something was watching me. I told myself it was normal. Bears, deer, maybe even one of those creepy raccoons with glowing eyes that looked like it had committed tax fraud. Just nature doing its thing. The second night felt worse though. I walked faster, kept the flashlight pinned ahead of me like it was a weapon instead of a cheap, camp-issued beam barely strong enough to light my shoes. And every crack of a twig felt like something coming towards me. The third night, dread settled in before I even stepped into the trees. I felt like if I went down that path, I'd run straight into something with a human outline. The doom wasn't vague anymore. Still, I forced myself to go. I entered, and when I reached the pavilion, I didn't settle in like usual. I sat with my back tight to one of the wooden posts, flashlight aimed at the tree line, waiting for the sun, like some jittery little gremlin on night watch. Every rustle in the grass made my heart slam against my ribs, and the moment the sky turned grey, I practically sprinted back. The next night should have felt safer. My friend and I got invited to smoke with two guys at 2:30 a.m, and having someone with me was comforting, as there's safety in numbers, even if the numbers were two dumb teenagers whose biggest fear was getting caught by staff. We slipped out laughing, whispering, and hyped for a harmless adventure. The canteen was a long, echoing hallway, when empty. Booths on one side, dusty arcade machines on the other, the whole thing swallowed by the dark. Our footsteps were the only sound. We figured the guys must be in the bathroom in the back. Halfway down the hall, we saw it. A figure at the far end of the corridor standing still. We yelled at first, half joking, trying to make our fear sound like sarcasm. "Come on, who is that?" But there was no reply. We stepped closer. Nothing reflected, no color. The light hit it and seemed to just vanish, like the silhouette was made of darkness itself. And that's when the figure sprinted into the bathroom. But it was too fast. It looked like the feet didn't even connect to the floor. We looked at each other, terrified. Why hide? Why run? We waited outside the bathroom for 10 minutes, and we couldn't hear a peep from within. Eventually we decided to bust in on a count of 3, joking weakly about, "Pull your pants up, we're coming in." We brushed the door open, and of course it was empty. My friend froze in place. I could practically feel the fear radiating from her. We backed away slowly, like the walls might suddenly start moving too. The hallway felt darker now. That's when we ran. The sprint back to the cabin felt endless. The tree swayed as if something ran alongside us just out of sight, but I didn't dare look. Once we got back inside, we locked ourselves in the cabin bathroom and tried to breathe normally. Surely someone was just messing with us, but my friend didn't laugh. She didn't even smile. She asked how it could still be pitch black when we shined our flashlight on it. I couldn't even see clothes or a face, just the outline. I didn't have the answer. I spent the rest of the night awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over. The woods, the figure, the dread, the way it moved, and the way it vanished into a room with no exit. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was a person who somehow slipped past us. Maybe our eyes malfunctioned in the dark. Maybe the stress of the whole weird summer finally got to us. I don't know. Whatever was out there, it had been circling the camp for a while. It had been carving symbols, and when it saw us, it decided to play with us. I don't even know what that thing was, and I don't think I want to know. I never returned to camp after that. Let's set the scene. It's winter, maybe a week or so before Christmas in Texas. I've been sitting outside since the early morning before sunrise, seen a bobcat and a doe at this point. In the distance we heard coyotes doing their thing. That's when it starts to get weird. The coyotes start screaming in pain, and among their noises we hear this horrifying growly noise that sounded like nothing I'd ever heard, especially in the woods around here. I'm freaking out at this point, and my ex tell me we'll leave after sundown. I argue with him, but he wins since he drove us. Now at this point it's dark, like we should have left when it was still light out. We shine a light in front of us out of the blind to look and make sure we aren't going to spook anything or walk out on a predator. Then we shine our light to the left of us. That's when we see 2 deer walking out. It's too dark for us to hardly make out their shapes in the dark at this point. We sit and watch them play and run around. Then one ran away from the other towards us and turned. Now mind you, the deer are in the middle of the field. Behind the other deer, this thing slowly rises behind it, towering over it, and starts moving like a man. All we see are the eyes shining. It's moving towards us, but we're not sure if it knows we're in the stand. We've been quiet all day. It starts bouncing around, then it walks like how we do when we move. Then the closest to us, that we can see its shape, runs off and the other follows, along with the giant thing. From there, we wait 20 minutes. We could hear the weird growly noises it was making as it ran back into the woods after the deer. We ended up getting out of there without seeing anything. I completely forgot to mention while writing this that I was recording a video of the coyotes howling and making a ruckus, and I believe you can hear the weird noise or part of its noise. I would have to find the video. It's been years and I've had a new phone since then. The whole reason I'm bringing this story up is because I believe I saw it again a few weeks ago. I was driving downtown when I saw this giant shadowy looking thing walking into the trees and turning back as I looked. All I could see was the eye shine near the exact same area I saw the first one. I know Wendigos aren't a thing in Texas, but I have no idea what this creature was. And I'm terrified to talk about it near where it happened, because typically, when I talk about something like this, it shows up again. I have no idea what I saw. I know there's probably going to be skeptics, but this is why I hardly go outside now. I'd love to get you guys' thoughts on this. When I was 16, I used to camp out alone, thinking I understood the land because it was familiar. A few days before everything happened, my friend Caden told me something strange while we were walking back from school. He said some things out here don't act like animals or people, but like something that thinks it's both. I laughed, but he didn't. And he told me that if something ancient ever found me, it would be best to stand my ground. He said that if it ever tests you, don't let it see the inside of your ribs. I had no idea what he meant by that. Sometime after that conversation, I went camping near this crooked juniper tree at the edge of our property. The wind died down just after midnight, and I was half asleep when I heard something in the darkness. It was my name being called. It wasn't a whisper nor a shout, more like someone pressing the shape of my name through their teeth for the first time. My hands went cold, and I turned my lantern towards the sound. And that's when I saw it standing between 2 dead shrubs. At first it looked like a deer. Then my eyes adjusted, and the details hit me like a kick to the chest. The legs were too long, bending in ways that made my joints ache just looking at them. The head hung low, like the neck was failing, and the eyes weren't reflecting any light, but absorbed them. It called my name again in the exact same tone, almost like it were reading from a script. I wanted to run, and my body screamed too. But then Caden's strange warning came back to me. Don't let it see the inside of your ribs. I didn't know what that meant. I forced myself to stand, though my knees felt like water. The fire crackled behind me, and the creature lurched forward abruptly, its limbs bending the wrong direction before correcting themselves. Whatever it was stared at me without blinking, and opened its mouth, and made this strange, strangled sound. My whole body trembled, but I didn't turn away. I didn't speak, I didn't run. Something in me knew that if I did any of those things, it would close the distance between us in a heartbeat. The longer I stared, the more its face twitched, these little spasms and tiny cracks. Then suddenly, it snapped its head to the side. That was it. I ran, and it didn't chase me. I haven't camped alone since, and I don't think I'm going to do so anytime soon. I'm not sure if my friend's advice helped me or not. but I don't ever want to see whatever that thing is again in my life. Does anyone have any explanation for what it could be? Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed tonight's collection of Skinwalker stories, and if of course you did, you can let me know down below. If you would like your birthday shout out like David's, and to pick the topic of your choice for your birthday, feel free to follow the link over to Patreon to find out more. I really hope you guys had fun with this one. I certainly did. I love a good Skinwalker story. I hope to see you again on Tuesday, and let me know what you think of this dynamic. Instead of having, just the comp, which I think is just not so popular anymore, having just a new story instead on a Saturday. I only did it on Sunday because it was David's birthday day itself. And maybe we can, kind of not phase them out, but do them less frequently and just have more new content. Thoughts? You know where to put them so that I can do something about it. All right, guys, I'm going to head off now. Have a great Sunday. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one. Good night.